meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners with agenda item 25, development of a commission policy regarding wildlife contests for possible action. Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed, the commission will discuss a prior draft of a wildlife contest policy forwarded by the Administrative Procedures, Regulations, and Policy Committee, which was discussed by the Commission at their August 12, 2016 meeting. The Commission may choose to discuss the merits of the policy and may amend, forward, discard, or reinitiate development of a policy that articulates the Commission's perspective regarding contests of take of wildlife.
Thank you, Chairman Wallace, members of the Commission. Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed for the record. As you said, this was a policy that was requested by the Commission, requested from the Administrative Procedures, Regulations, and Policy Committee, along with NDOW to draft this policy. I believe that came out of the APRC Committee in June, and then, as you said, was heard for the first time by this board in August. So I think you've all probably read it, seen it in the support material, so I'll spare the time of actually going over it word by word, but that's the history on it.
Thank you, Chief Turnipseed, and I'll start off by saying I brought this back. We heard it at the August Commission meeting, and the Commission seemed very split on it in different directions of which way to go, and it was kind of left open, and I vowed to bring it back to the Commission, and we're here today, and I kind of want to get some direction from the Commission. If we're interested in a policy, then we'll proceed and work with what we've got, start over, whatever. I just want to get the Commission on record of whether we want to continue or we want to put it on the shelf and move on. So after that, any comments by the Commissioners? Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, just quickly, when this first came out, I was a proponent of it, but obviously we had two petitions requesting that we look at a regulation in regards to wildlife policies, or regulations on wildlife contests. 2 times, obviously, that failed. I thought that there may be some value on all sides of having some sort of policy, or at least a statement on where the Commission stands on that, to kind of further up some of the discussions we had around those petitions. And the last time we heard this, it seemed like the public on either side of the issue was lukewarm at best, or flatly rejected moving forward on any sort of policy. It was kind of a regulation or nothing for, I think, some folks. So I guess what I'll be looking for in public comment is if there is an appetite for a policy, or if it's kind of regulation or nothing by some of those who have proposed regulations in the past, just for my own edification.
Commissioner Valentine.
Yeah, I think the Policy and Procedures was tasked with putting together a policy, and I'm not sure everybody understands exactly what a policy is as far as what it does for achieving what it is I think a lot of the public wants. So in my mind, when we drafted this, I felt comfortable with what we had here, and my opinion hasn't changed regarding that.
Further Commission comment? Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During our committee conversations, and I've expressed my same thoughts here, I think it's important for us to find a way to allow to let the public know where we stand on things as a commission. And I'm still not sure the best way to go about it. Reading the policy now, it's clear that it's, it really delineates kind of some obvious things. Maybe they needed to be said. Maybe that's what needs to be done. But from my perspective, I think about what the ultimate. We're a very urbanized state. And because we're urbanized, the thought processes are different than they are in states that are more rural. And I feel that whether we like it or not, we may be in a position, if we continue to ignore it, I think it's something that's going to be addressed at some point. I don't know if it's now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, but I think that we're probably sooner than later. And I think that as a commission, we really do have we have a role to play here in terms of getting out in front of it a little bit. There's been some good points made. Not all aspects of wildlife management are offensive to people. We don't hear a lot about that stuff. We might have differing opinions. We might hear different opinions about certain things, but this is one of those things that elicits a real strong response from the public. People that don't generally have opinions about wildlife or wildlife management will develop one over issues like this. And for me, I would prefer that that be a more positive opinion, a more positive position on wildlife, and then have that sacrificed for some of the things that we probably ought to take a stronger stand on. I'm not opposed to people going out and removing coyotes and things like that, but there's no doubt that there are aspects of it that I think that we all have a level of maybe a level of less acceptance for than we do in other aspects of the things we talk about. So I'd hate to see us not taking a position and doing something a little more proactive on wildlife contests. I think it could cause us to lose some support and put us in a spot where we're not as effective.
Further comments from the Commission? Commissioner Hubbs.
Yes, I'm sorry. I tried to get back as soon as we could today, but obviously I'd like to comment on this. I definitely believe the public has come in and let us know how they feel about some of these contests, the killing contest in particular, but for really any species. And I think whether it be coyotes or whatever it might be the next week. And I think by not saying something sometimes, you are saying something. And so, I mean, look, we had a petition come forward. We didn't respond to it or accept it for various reasons. But I think a policy is proper. It's not binding. It is our position statement. So we have something to look back on and reference in the future moving forward.
Commissioner Allenberg.
Yes, I actually have reviewed the August commission meeting on this subject. Went to all the sites, followed the Project Coyote, and tried to look at all the broad spectrum of all of the people here. So I'd like to just at least lay out where I stand on all this stuff. And I start out by asking myself, how does it affect the resource, first and foremost? And surprisingly, by all sides, it doesn't affect the resource. Nobody, in fact, the comment is we can harvest up to 75% of the population and still have a healthy, viable population of coyotes. So when it comes to these contests, they don't appear to at all to affect the resource, not at all. Questions as to its ethic, is it ethical? Well, I guess personally, having called coyotes, I think it takes a hell of a lot more personal skill as a hunter to call a coyote than, say, go deer hunting or any of that stuff. It takes a skill level. You have to understand that animal. When you become the prey and that predator is coming to you, it takes a lot more skill set and knowledge of that animal. So I have to say that it is ethical in my mind. Is it a management tool? Only in a blanket sense, in a global sense. I don't think it is a specific management tool, but I also ask myself, can it be? When I was trying to do my research, I couldn't find a whole lot of info from the promoters of these contests. There's not a whole lot out there. I have a hard time gauging how popular it is, the size of the contest, the amount of money involved. It appears to me that most of the money involved at this point in time is strictly to encourage participation. That's just the way the prize is. It's just to get people involved in outdoor recreation. So although I have lots of issues when money gets involved in some of these natural resources, it doesn't appear that it crosses my line anyway, because I envision it as strictly a way to entice people to come in, which all of this stuff is consistent with the policy that's been written. So I guess I would support the policy that's been written 100%. There's nothing in there that I don't think is appropriate. I will, however, also agree that it has no, it has no teeth. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Almberg. Anything further? Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, I just got to agree with what Commissioner Altenberg said when he was talking about, when you become the prey, and when that coyote's coming in. When he was talking about that, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and kind of got the adrenaline going, and it does require a tremendous amount of skill to do that. And something else that's important to remember too is that as a coyote killer, you're not always successful. And when you bring that coyote in, and he gets away, you just sent him to college, and he graduated, and he's not coming back again to one of those. So, I mean, it's not like every time you call a coyote, you're going to get the coyote. So there's a tremendous amount of skill, and it's a real sport, and it takes a real sportsman to be successful.
Anything further for the commission before I take it out to public comment? Commissioner Johnston.
I guess I've been through this policy. I went and read a lot of different things, and I read through this policy, and I think as it's drafted, it's basically could be summarized as the commission supports contests that follow all laws and adhere to principles of fair chase as outlined by various sportsmen's groups. And the commission does not support contests that violate the law, which kind of goes without saying, or don't follow the principles of fair chase. I think the problem is you adopt this policy and we're still going to be arguing over whether or not certain types of contests adhere to principles of fair chase, or if there's some line that's crossed, or where is it crossed. So the policy in my mind doesn't do much to guide this commission or future commissions, or really address the issue, which then we're going to be arguing over whether or not a particular type of contest does or does not violate the policy. And there's going to be some who say, for example, a coyote contest does not, or it violates the policy. And there will be those who say, no, it's absolutely consistent with the policy, based upon some of the comments we received here. And so I don't know what the policy does for us. Even then, it says it should be the policy of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners to encourage all organizers of various things. But it doesn't really, the policy is drafted doesn't say we're going to take steps to curb contests that violate this policy or anything like that. I think the other thing is, I'm not so certain there's even consensus as to what a wildlife contest is. We look at this policy in the context of prior petitions addressing coyote contests. This policy is drafted, covers all wildlife contests, and wildlife contest isn't defined. And I'm sure, and I know because I've done the research, various groups will define certain things as a wildlife contest that I would not characterize as a wildlife contest. And I'll just, for example, we received a letter from the Humane Society of the United States, and it was to recommend that the commission implement a regulation to ban all wildlife killing contests in Nevada. So I thought, I wonder what the Humane Society may say about wildlife contests on its public information. And right from the Humane Society's website, trophy hunting is a global business and nothing more than a killing contest. Humane Society says a trophy hunt in which I might receive recognition from a sportsman's group because the animal I killed scored a certain thing, that's a killing contest. And that group's then saying you need to ban anything that would be considered trophy hunting. Yet we discussed yesterday on harvest management guidelines about special hunt units where it would be an increased trophy quality, managing it from a certain level. So we start talking about a policy, what is a contest, and certain proponents saying ban all contests, and their suggestion would be that would ban anything that would then be considered by them to be a trophy hunt. I can't go that far. I'm not going down that path. And it seems to be this path that we're being invited to go down because of one issue of coyote contests. And no one has even identified the number of coyote contests that have even occurred in the state of Nevada in the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years. I mean, how much time are we going to spend on coyote contests when, as far as I know, there's one in the North Valley's out of Reno that's drawn everyone's attention? It just feels like there's a diverging paths and a policy. Policy doesn't say much. A policy that would just result in more debate without resolution. And for that, I'm very. I don't know where I stand on adopting this policy. I think I'm opposed to it because I don't think it does anything. If we are going to do a policy, maybe it needs to be addressed to a particular type of contest. Maybe it needs to define what a contest is. I'm anxious to hear from the public in that regard.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnston. Commissioner Young.
Of course, I'll throw my 2 cents in, and I somewhat agree with Paul that this is well written and addresses some issues, and certainly agree with you, Brad, and your thinking. And as a practitioner for many years of actually applying the law where the rubber meets the road, a policy is very nebulous. And I get tired of this commission being thrown in the middle constantly because we all have different ethics and morals. And when you start regulating ethical behavior, moral behavior, everybody has a different standard. And where the rubber meets the road is in the law. That's the will of the people. And I had a policy when I was Clark County Sheriff that I didn't like gangster rap music in my county. I still don't like that crap. I think it's garbage. I think it promotes violence and all kinds of things I abhor and don't stand for. But it's the way of the world, and people enjoy it, and they thought, hey, too bad, Sheriff. You ain't going to pass a law that's going to prevent free speech. I happen to disagree wholeheartedly with recreational marijuana. And I told the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission last week in no uncertain terms why, and a lot of them agreed with me. And I will do everything I can to defy that law. On the other hand, I'm so far to the left that I just can't go for it. I never saw drugs introduced to a family or a neighborhood or a society that improved anything. Not one time. Been around it a long time. Medical marijuana, on the other hand, I have no problem with. Prescribed by a doctor, and it's the law. It was the law of the land or the law of Nevada, but all of them violate federal law, so it puts everybody in a conundrum. And here again, it's too nebulous, it's too hard to grasp anything that's a policy and effectively deal with it. I don't know how we can stand up here and say this is our ethics and our morals, but we all have individual ones and represent the people of Nevada, because there's a wide and diverse feeling about this. And I think it goes back to what Grant said. Let's see what people can come up with, and if they want to go to the legislature and pass a law that Tyler and his team can enforce, I think we'd stand here and say we support it. But anything short of a law, the law passed by our legislature or a law passed by Congress is signed by the president or signed by the governors, is too difficult, and I think we waste a lot of time on one contest. And that's my opinion. So I wouldn't support endorsing a policy, not because I don't agree with how it was written or some of the things said in there, but just because I know that it just creates harder feelings from those that want stance one way or the other. And I don't think this commission really is in a position to waste time like that on fighting over same things that are just ethical and moral. We'll never agree with everybody. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Anything further from the commission? Commissioner Hubbs.
This policy was, in my opinion, a step back from addressing a petition that was put forward to our commission with a lot of the general public very, very upset about things that were happening. It was more than just one hunt. I know we had the one north of Reno, but I do remember coming on and being very new, and they had one near Austin, Nevada, I believe it was. And the pictures are horrible. I mean, to somebody who doesn't go hunt, they know enough to know that we don't really eat coyote. And yeah, we may make a cap. Maybe somebody has a coyote cap, but you don't see them out very much in public, and you don't see people going to people's homes and even having them use the carcass in any way that I can really think of. Maybe there's some Native American uses for coyote. I'm not 100% sure, but I think what they were feeling is that it was offensive and it was very wasteful. And it was disrespectful to our wildlife in general. And they voiced their opinion. And I think that we took some time and put together something, and it is a bit nefarious. And I understand that. But I don't think we've said anything that we aren't in agreement with here. And I think there's a large sector of our general public who needs to understand that we respect all wildlife. It's a strong message. Thank you.
Commissioner Allenberg, did you have a comment?
Actually, in those regards, as I was doing the research, or trying to do what research I could find, I never found a single, when I did find a coyote contest, not a single thing that was disrespectful that they were addressing. It was all respectful towards the animal, towards the resource.
Anything further? Commissioner Ebbs.
Well, I'd have to disagree with you because what was provided here to the commission prior to coming on showed a very high disregard for the animals after they were killed, some being dumped, some being left, all piled up in the back of a pickup truck. I mean, if you think of the story that you represented today, that's completely different from the visual aids we were seeing at our commission meeting. If you're out by yourself and you're using a coyote calling device and you're doing it using the models of fair chase and using your ability to hunt, I don't think there's anyone here at this table that has an issue with that. And I don't think our policy says that we do. I think it's the rampant competitive spirit where you have a group of people going out taking tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of coyotes and then disposing of them in a negative manner, and people actually seeing that.
Commissioner Allenberg.
Oh, I agree totally with you. I did not see those. Some of that stuff would offend me as well. But I also go back to our constitutional right of freedom of expression. Again, what's acceptable to me and you is maybe not necessarily acceptable or to someone else. And with the freedom of speech, I think that you tread on thin ice with, again, even policy or otherwise, of telling people what is and is not acceptable.
Commissioner McNinch.
So I guess I share a lot of the same thoughts that Commissioner Johnson expressed with the policy. We're being asked, that's what the petitions were for, that's what people have been testifying, asking us to implement meaningful change by drafting and adopting regulation. So if we were to put this in place and make our position clear, it doesn't change anything. People can still do the same exact things that they've been doing, and we just have a piece of paper that there's nothing in here that affects change. It represents our position, which I think is good. So from that standpoint, I can understand the importance of the policy, but from a standpoint, I think that it's going to fall short of what the people that are expressing concerns to us are expecting from us, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. And perfect example is the HSUS. They systematically took this document and they broke down each section, and they broke it down, saying why this is not effective. Because the point is that they want change. They don't necessarily care about our position, individually or otherwise. They want change, and this doesn't get us there, and I guess that's where I'm at. And I'm not sure to what extent. So I'm willing to take that next step and have that conversation. That's what I'm trying to say. But I'm not sure, we can make our opinions known through the policy, but I'm not sure that that resolves the issue.
Commissioner Johnston.
Yeah, I guess I get to I keep coming back to an issue of if one individual goes out and exercises a skill to hunt coyotes, that's okay. If 2 guys do it, that's okay as well. If 10 guys decide to do it on a weekend in some organized fashion, but all go their separate ways to exercise that same skill, somehow we've crossed the line into this reprehensible type of contest, when if they were doing the same thing in their individual capacity, it's perfectly acceptable. And I think the decision for the commission to make is, are you going to go down the path of regulating coyote hunting or not? That's really the decision. It's not about wildlife contest policies. That is the decision for the commission to make. And we've previously looked at that issue. There's a number of reasons. And, you know, I hear, well, some of the people from contests put on pictures that some people might find offensive. Well, you know, I can be on a deer hunt and have a picture taken of me standing behind a deer, and some people would find that offensive. I don't like some wildlife photos that I see. It's like, you know, clean up the animal before you take the photo. You know, don't take a picture after you cape it out. You know, do different things. Be respectful. But who am I to say what pictures you should or should not post? I personally have made the decision I'm not going to post hunting photos on social media anymore, because some people do find them offensive. But that's just my personal decision. Some people might walk into my home and find my home offensive because of some of the things that hang on the wall. So am I getting into that area where, you know, I've done nothing more than, according to the Humane Society, engage in killing contests because I've gone overseas to hunt and come home, and I like the memories of my hunt. I like to look on the wall and the memories it brings back, and it's not a memory of killing an animal, despite what a lot of people think. It's memories of friendships made and time spent around a campfire and different things like that. So, you know, to me, I commend the committee for undertaking the effort to draft the policy. I just doesn't think it advances the ball forward. And the decision for the commission to make is, are you going to regulate coyote hunting or not? That's really the decision. And I know where I stand on that issue. So.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Hubbs.
Just on that note, you know, I just want to make a distinction to Commissioner, or I always go through this, but it's Vice Chairman Johnston. Brad, I understand that you researched the Humane Society's viewpoint. I do understand why you would do that, and your concerns, especially with what your passions are personally, and I get that, and many of the passions of any hunter, I would have to say. But again, our policy doesn't, it's not in alignment with what the Humane Society has stated publicly, and that doesn't mean that simply because we nod our head to the North American model that somehow we're going down a slippery slope, because we already support that. Life is about gray areas, we know that. It's never easy to know what the right decision to do is sometimes, especially when we don't have regulations or laws that govern these non-game species that are being taken. But I just want to go back in time. I mean, I know where we stood that day when we denied that petition, and we decided as a commission to put forward a policy, and I feel like we're backpedaling now, and I like to follow through with things, and so I just would hope that we all reconsider and look at it and see that it's not, I don't think it's an overreaching policy. It's something we've stated we would create, and I'm just getting a feeling. I know some of you are saying, well, it needs to say something. I mean, if it needs more work, that's one thing, but if you're saying let's scrap it altogether, I think that's going back on what we previously stated.
I don't want to just back and forth, but I don't think this policy aligns us with any particular group on one side of the issue or other. I just don't think it addresses the issue and just leads to further debate and argument over whether certain contests do or do not violate the policy. And then what do we do there? We're continuing to argue. That's one of my concerns with this policy as drafted.
And I'm going to go back to that meeting when we first started discussing the policy. And in my recollection of that meeting, we didn't take a formal vote by the commission to say we will do a policy. There was just discussion of maybe that's something we should look into. There was not an overwhelming majority that said we're going to do a policy. And we brought forth the policy, and here we are today, and it feels like part of the commission wants it, part of the commission doesn't. And I think that was why I brought it forward again, is I wanted a final, we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. And that's where I still stand today, that we need to hear it and we need to hear it out. And I think we've had good discussion today, actually better than we've had in previous times on a policy. And at that point, unless anyone else has a comment, I think I want to take it out to public comment. We'll hear what the public has to say, and then we can bring it back. And I'd like to see the commission take a stance for or against and move at that point. Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, just to follow up on Chairman Johnston's comment, I personally, as chair at the time, made the commitment to look at the possibility of a wildlife policy the second time we denied the petition. I appreciate now Chairman Wallace's efforts to bring this to resolution, either by moving forward with a policy or not. As I stated in my comment earlier, and I think you're out of the room, I'm just kind of curious from some of the proponents of the petitions if they believe a policy is warranted or if it's regulation or nothing kind of in their mind. So I'm curious to see what the public input is. But just to clarify, it was, I believe, my direction at the time and my personal commitment, not any sort of binding commitment by this board, that we would look at least allow for the ability to look at a policy coming out of those two petition processes. So I'll take the responsibility for this, and with that, again, I appreciate Chairman Wallace allowing that discussion to carry forward, but I agree, it's time to fish or cut bait, I think, on this.
Anything further? I'm going to move to public comment. Hearing none, we'll start with public comment in Las Vegas.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Jana Wright for the record. I certainly support a policy, but to define it as coyote killing contests. I would like to see the commission take a stand on whether you think coyote contests, killing contests are ethical and should be supported in the state, or if they make no sense. I don't understand why people would just go out and kill an animal just to kill it. I can see if a coyote was coming for your chickens, or you had a lamb, a domestic sheep that had a lamb and a herd of coyote. I can see killing predators that are posing a danger to you personally or your property. But when you just kind of shuffle this around, that it doesn't make any difference if one person goes out or two people go out, but when you see pictures of coyotes stacked in a pickup truck, or let's get together for the weekend and just go out and kill some animals, that's so offensive to me. And I don't have a problem when I say nothing on deer hunts, I say nothing on elk hunts, I say nothing on turkey hunts or fishing, or it doesn't make sense to me. So I just would welcome the commission taking a stand one way or other, and then we'll move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jana. Further public comment in Las Vegas?
No further comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Public comment in Carson City, please. Coming up, Gil. Turn on your mic.
Looking for a button, not a old school. I was impressed with what Commissioner Johnston said, and I think when you, as we addressed the issue of coyotes, way back when this whole thing hit the fan, I think it was mostly over the way it was advertised. It looked like to the public who wasn't informed and had some opinions about it, it looked like it was just a killing contest. The question about removing coyotes, it kind of is dependent upon the situation. Now, I live in an urban environment, and I had a neighbor's cat just killed by a coyote. I see at like between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, a pair of coyotes lope across my lawn every day looking for something. They send the young ones out next to the fence of my neighbors to attract their dogs to come out and play with them. I've seen it down the road from where we live. And so, you know, the department doesn't take it upon themselves to remove those nuisances. We can't remove those nuisances in Carson City because there's a no discharge law. So people are really concerned. I've been out, you know, driving around the state with some of our friends as we were going, you know, going on a hunt one year, and one of the guys in the group saw a big coyote loping across the road. He stopped and he put it down, and you know, because the coyote was, you know, eyeing some of the sheep. So what would have happened had he not taken that coyote down? I don't know. And as Commissioner Johnson said, if 2 people want to go out and try to reduce the coyote population, no one really says too much about it. If 10 people organize themselves and want to go out and reduce the population of coyotes, are people going to say anything about it? I think it's a question of where. If you're in, you know, ranch land where ranchers are losing stock because of coyotes, they call the department calls animal services, and somebody goes out and reduces the population. It's a control method. And I think what really got out of hand was the way it was advertised. I think, you know, people got the wrong impression, or perhaps we just interpreted it the wrong way. I mean, to some it was very offensive. And I can understand that. I appreciate people saying, why would somebody want to kill a coyote? Well, if everybody really understood the problem that we have in this state with coyotes and the amount of money the department spends and the government spends reducing the coyote population, I think they would better understand why it's not the worst thing in the world to remove troublesome coyotes. So I think we're taking on an issue that's you're never going to make everybody happy. And I think, you know, we've been around for many, many years, and this has never been to the point where we need to make a ruling on it or set up regulations about
Gail,
it.
I hate to interrupt you.
I don't think that's us.
But
thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark. I live in the largest urbanized county in Nevada. We have, over the last several years, had an ever-increasing population of urban coyotes. It's become almost nightly news, or at least 4 nights a week on the news, you'll pick up a story. I decided, rather than having myself or opinions of my board, I actually asked Doug Nielsen from the Department of Wildlife to come and give a presentation to our board about urban coyotes. And I found it to be very illuminating in the fact of listening to him. The fact is that we have people in the city that are feeding them. You go to Sun City, where they have golf courses, you have green belts, you have trees, you have rabbits, you have feral cat colonies. I hate to tell you, but feral cat colonies and rabbits are the two biggest sources of food for coyotes, urban coyotes, followed by people's dogs when they're not very intelligent and leave them out at wrong times. The coyotes walk on the walls between the houses. All these things lead to better education of people of how to live in an urban environment with coyotes. And the thing is that at some point we're going to have to reduce their numbers in the cities because they'll become a threat as they take out cat or rabbit populations. They're going to go to other things. We have luckily in the state of Nevada have only in the last 10 years 4 recorded bite instances potentially from coyotes, according to Doug Nielsen. In all those cases, it was somebody trying to break up their dog-coyote fighting, and it was unclear which animal bit the person. California, we've had people be attacked by coyotes. We've had people injured. And so we have to come up with some process for removing animals from our urban environment, and that's where you're seeing this. I see people that are very much against coyote killing contests and other things until their fluffy is eaten or their little pet is gone. We had people sitting on Mount Charleston that had a wild game farm with exotic animals. The coyotes came in and started eating all their animals because it was easy pickings. We have to be able to draw a line, and I think a coyote killing or coyote removal or coyote contest policy doesn't get us there. I agree with every commissioner up here said points that I think are extremely well taken, is that we cannot in a policy regulate where we want to go with this. If you want to regulate how we harvest an unprotected animal, that's going to take a legislative change, as Commissioner Young said, in a law. Everything else we do from that is going to be short because it's going to be unenforceable by our game wardens, and you're going to have people out there saying we haven't went far enough. And from that perspective, the best thing we can do in the near term with coyotes is educate people, because we're going to have to live with them. They're becoming a much bigger problem in our urban environments, and they'll continue to become a problem. And we may be overtaken by events on this commission of what's going to happen at county levels because of it, is all I'm saying. Because when somebody actually a human actually gets attacked or hurt, and that human has some political prowess, like a politician's grandson or something, or grandkid, that's going to change the world, and we're not going to have no control over it. So a policy doesn't get us there. If we're going to do something, we should legislate, if we feel necessary, something in the legislature. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we do other than educate the people of how to live with coyotes in the urban environment. Thank you.
Further public comment in Carson City? Come on up. Maybe one of you take the other chair there so you're ready for the next.
Carol Ann Weed, Carson City. NDOW has produced a policy that makes about as much sense as calling the coyote killing contests social contests, wildlife contests, and calling contests. These events that mindlessly slaughter, injure, and torture and abuse coyotes have been proven by eyewitness accounts, which you spoke about, and photographic evidence, which you have, to be well outside the scope of everything that NDOW lists as supporting and as everything it claims not to support. When this draft was first presented to us, eyewitnesses described the barbaric behavior that was sanctioned during the coyote slaughter. Coyotes maimed, still moving in the ever-increasing mountain of tortured wildlife. The photographs confirm these accounts. There is no apparent concern that these inhumane and barbaric practices continue to be condoned by NDOW and are now further sanctioned by this policy that has already been proven to be of no use in its present form, since what is listed as not being supported by NDOW is currently the standard practice of those slaughter contests per eyewitness accounts. We said in the meeting when a draft was originally presented for public input that without shutting down these killing contests, the moment they slide into abuse of our wildlife, this policy is not functional. Other states are capable of stopping these abuses in the 21st century, and so should Nevada. A huge oversight by NDOW is that the coyote wildlife populations belongs to all the tax-paying residents of Nevada, not just killing contest participants. And we obviously do not want our wildlife tortured by killers looking to win some cash. Therefore, game wardens, whose job it is to protect wildlife and the public interest, on private or public land must be in attendance at each and every coyote killing contest to ensure the humane treatment of the public's wildlife. The National Shooting Sports Foundation states, "The ethical hunter never takes more game than can be used." So what exactly is being taught the younger members of this coyote killing machine called a contest? These animals are not being abused and slaughtered to put food on the table. They are being killed for entertainment. Game wardens can change this dynamic to ensure that the wildlife and public interest of the majority of Nevada residents is protected, which means that the protocols that demand humane treatment and conduct by participants is guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby McCollum. My comments are short. The gambling aspect hasn't been addressed. Calcutta betting and money prizes are a huge incentive in these contests. And I agree that the regulation of gambling is not within your jurisdiction, but then neither are feral horses or public transfers and sales. But the Commission issued Policy 67 and 64 on those matters, outside its regulatory control, because they felt those issues affected Nevada's wildlife. Letters were sent to the BLM regarding the Commission's position on wild horses. Since you're in a letter-writing frame of mind today, nothing prohibits this Commission from writing to the State Gaming Control Board or the Gaming Commission to request that regulations governing the gambling aspects in these contests be enacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment in Carson City, please.
Yes, for the record, Fred Volz. I don't think 3 minutes could begin to cover all of the problems I have with some of the statements made by some of the commissioners today. It shows a very strong willingness to try and subvert this whole issue once again. We saw yesterday an obvious logical link between instances of waste and poaching report from the Chief Game Warden in this agenda item, which should not escape this commission. We have repeated wildlife waste via the wildlife killing contests, and reputable science presented by Project Coyote has shown that disruptive and counterproductive of the effect of mass killing on guesstimated species populations. The science does not support mass indiscriminate slaughter of any species because of its disruptive effects upon the interspecies food chain. If the contests are to proceed on any basis, and I emphasize any, there is also a need to have each and every proposed contest vetted for gambling components by the State Gaming Control Board. To respond to a few of the specific points made by some of the commissioners, the claim was made that we don't know the number of contests. Well, there's a reason for that, and that's because the sponsors want to try and keep this as private as possible, knowing the embarrassment they face and the criticism from the public, the majority of the public, I would submit. I can tell you that of the ones that I've seen, there have been at least 2 in Clark County, 1 in Austin, 1 in Elko, and 2 in the North Valleys of Washoe County. Another point, which contests meet the standard has never been established because the commission decided a policy was enough rather than a regulation. This was just an arbitrary decision, even after 2 petitions were filed with this commission. The commission made a regulation law, if you will, without going to the legislature for disabled hunters to have as many assistance as they needed. So why not the same treatment on the wildlife killing contests and specifically the coyotes? For Commissioners Almberg and Barnes, who are relatively new, they need to look at the documentation submitted in the 2 petitions because it's quite clear that the science is there, the pictures are there, and I would encourage them to go back and look at that at some point to educate themselves on the subject. To the point of isolated instances of coyote problems, that's not the same as a platoon of people killing as many as they can under time constraints, as though it is indeed a contest. And I would finally add that man has tried to exterminate coyotes, ranchers, farmers, etc., for over 2,000 years, and they have failed miserably at the task. You're not going to get rid of the coyotes no matter how much you dislike them or don't want them. We have to learn how to coexist with them, And Project Coyote has some excellent ideas which the Commission would be well advised to try and widely disseminate in the community and in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Next.
Elaine Carrick. I don't have a lot to add to what has already been said here in the inn in Las Vegas. I am against coyote killing contests, and if there seems to be a problem with lumping all wildlife together for wildlife killing contests, then maybe we should specify coyote killing contest, and that would certainly be a good start. The Commission stating what they support and what they do not support, every single one of the contests violates all the points that the Commission supports, and the coyote killing contests fall into the area that the Commission does not support these contests. So right now, there needs to be some sort of ban on coyote killing contests. There are bans for illegal hunting of animals, certain animals. It's nice just to put it in writing, but if there's not any meat there behind it, people will continue to illegally kill animals out of season. It's the same thing with what the Commission supports or does not support. If there's no warden there to oversee this, then this will continue. I was at the very beginning of the wildlife, the petition meeting, and there were about 100 people there giving their opinions for this. You have information from the Humane Society which goes through each of the items that are listed here. I think there are certain things that are unethical and the public cannot accept. And I would say killing for fun and prizes, indiscriminately killing the coyotes. It's been shown that it's not a management issue. It is simply a fun thing. And as sportsmen, I think most sportsmen would agree going out and killing animals for fun and games is not sportsmanlike and is unacceptable. And I thank you, and if you would reevaluate this and come up with something that will stop the wildlife killing contest. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Mr. Chairman, Judy Karen for the record. I wasn't going to speak. I thought Washoe County would address what happened at our county game board. But I will read to you, I went to the county game board, and this was one of the reasons I went coyote contests or wildlife contests. When I had the honor to serve, I learned that policy gave direction to the public of what and how the commission or our county boards would process and develop how you would conduct the public's business. If we want to do something, or this commission wants to do something with a contest, I don't think policy is the correct vehicle to address it. If it's going to regulate, but if you're going to conduct the public's business, I think it should be through regulation. I think we're going the wrong avenue. I've heard some comments today about hunter ethics, ethical hunters. But specifically what they're talking to, or I hear is being spoken to, is about coyote contests, which is a non-protected species. And I believe people that can participate in that do not have to have a hunting license. So to say it's ethical hunters that are possibly abusing this or giving it a bad eye, I think that needs to have a broader discussion. It's not in policy where we should address it, and if you want to take it up by this commission, it should be through a regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Rex Flowers speaking on behalf of myself. I would hope that you would go ahead and just eliminate this policy. Don't go any further with it and just drop it. There's never going to be any satisfaction on either side of this policy. It's going to take regulation. Until you do that, nobody will be satisfied. And probably when you do regulation, won't be too many people satisfied there either. But this has just become a real waste of time. Nobody's going to be happy. You're not going to be anybody's friend when you get done with it. Your policy is talking about the commission does not is offended by bad pictures and believes you should conduct business in a certain way. I'll take you back about 8 or 9 years. We had a different commission led by a gentleman, Dr. Lent. And in that commission, we had a commissioner sit up where you folks are sitting at a meeting and said, just whack them and stack them. So every commission's different in their philosophy. I don't believe you should make a statement that may not be upheld by the next commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Next public comment in Carson City. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I listened to everybody carefully. I'll go back to what I said earlier, and maybe I can lead people down the path I would go. And the commissioners, some of them have experiences in variable things, but policies are very, very, very difficult. Now, I put myself in the place of the game warden that's responding to a wildlife contest, whatever you want to name it. And he or she responds there, and this is, you can insert police officer there because that's what I did. And you got a call from one of the members of the public here that I respect that has a big problem with it. And you got a call from a group of people up in Austin, Nevada that don't see it as a big deal or a problem. And you got the game warden there whose opinion doesn't really matter when it comes to enforcing the law and the will of the people. And I hate to go back to a basic civics class because I know we're all smarter than that, but there's the legislative portion or piece, which we're not the legislative piece. There's the judicial, which we're certainly not the judge and juries. But there's the executive branch, which we're a part of. And the executive branch is, given authority and the direction to enforce the law as written. And that game warden can't do squat with a policy. He's, as was just said by Rex, you're not going to make anybody happy. And I've been on 100 million of them calls where everybody left mad. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, then that's a good way to end it because nobody's, you're meeting in the middle and nobody's happy. That means you were successful. I personally don't know that that's what you want to do, with your time in reality. So I personally, just me personally, I am a sportsman and I represent a sportsman. I don't like wildlife killing contests. I wouldn't participate in them, and I would vote yes to regulate them. That's me talking. But it isn't even a regulation. I think Rex is correct. I believe we have to change the law to identify or make coyotes game. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, and I may not be 100% accurate on that, so there's a process that has to take place. And it may mean at the legislature. And if it's at the legislature, it's a tougher and longer and bitter process in some cases, and it may not get even done in one session. If it was a regulation that can be done by this commission, I got no problem going there myself. But I think there's a huge difference between what our newest commissioner said and a wildlife killing contest. I don't have a problem with, extermination of coyotes for a proper and normal reason, but I do have a big problem with glorifying the killing of animals for competitive spirit and nothing better. I've been in lots of contests regarding wildlife. They used to be normal. They were called big buck contests, and it was simply who killed the biggest buck based on the width and the score of the antlers. And I don't see too many of them in Vegas anymore, but it was something my dad, we always entered. But it wasn't the number of animals we killed. We only still killed the one that was regulated by law. And you worked harder for a bigger buck than perhaps you did for a forked horn. I think that's kind of similar to what we're talking here. If we're going to do something, let's either get a regulation and get it on, or quit wasting everybody's time talking about this, because we're not going to make anybody happy. I guarantee you. And I still, at the end of the day, I think about that game warden, because where the rubber meets the road, when the enforcement action is expected or something needs to be done out there in the field, it can't be decided in this room, because it doesn't mean anything in this room. It's where it actually occurs. Who's going to go to jail, or who's going to get a citation on a policy? I don't know if Tyler can tell you that he wrote a ticket and that's enforceable by a policy. I know I never did. There's specific rules or law. So I personally would be fine with that, and I would regulate out killing contests and specific to that description. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, just to address a couple of things. It's been mentioned several times that we should make this policy specific to coyote contests, and I adamantly disagree with that, because the two petitions we received were not specific to coyote contests. As I recall, it was wildlife killing contests. So just to address that, to address Commissioner Young's concern as to whether or not this is enforceable, I'll read right from the purpose. The purpose, this policy is to inform the public about the Commission's perspective regarding organized contests and the take of wildlife. There's no direction in regards to enforcement. There's no direction in regards to drafting another policy. I think everything beyond that sentence really is more background. Just to play devil's advocate on this a little bit, in terms of why I think a policy might make some sense, to the points that Ms. Karen made